Gaurav Sawant. Former US President Donald Trump has condemned the barbaric violence against Hindus in Bangladesh, and he's criticized US President Joe Biden and the Kamala Harris administration in his Diwali message, accusing them of ignoring both Hindus in the United States of America and globally. As part of his outreach to Hindu voters ahead of US presidential elections, he pledged, the 45th US President Donald Trump pledged to protect Hindu Americans and address the attacks and looting faced by Hindus, Christians and other minorities by mobs in Bangladesh. We bring you our top story.
Donald Trump wades into the Bangladesh communal tension issue in his Diwali message. The Republican nominee condemned barbaric violence against Hindus and other minorities in Bangladesh and criticized US President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris for their handling of the situation. Trump accused Harris, his Democratic presidential rival, and Biden of ignoring Hindus worldwide and in the United States. He promised that under his administration he would protect Hindu Americans from the quote-unquote anti-religion agenda of the radical left. The statement comes amidst targeting of Hindus in Bangladesh after the ouster of Sheikh Hasina from power, an issue that has largely drawn silence from world leaders apart from Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. In July and August, several members of the Hindu community in Bangladesh were assaulted and their properties and shops were vandalized by mobs. Reaching out to Indian American voters, since this is, after all, election season, Trump pledged to strengthen ties with India and Prime Minister Narendra Modi if re-elected. The BJP and VHP have welcomed the message from Donald Trump.
एक बड़ी अजीब विचित्र विडंबना है देश की और दुनिया की कि जब हिंदुओं के ऊपर हमले होते हैं, हिंदुओं को सताया जाता है, तो न सिर्फ बाकी वर्ल्ड लीडर्स जो है ना चुप्पी साध लेते हैं, अपितु साथ ही साथ उस ऑपरेशन को ऑपरेशन नहीं माना जाता, उसको उत्पीड़न को उत्पीड़न नहीं माना जाता, ऐसी खबरों को छुपाया भी जाता है। तो ये स्वागत कदम है।
नरेंद्र मोदी दुनिया के पहले ऐसे ग्लोबल लीडर थे जिन्होंने बांग्लादेशी हिंदुओं पर हो रही रिलीजियस एट्रोसिटीज़ के खिलाफ खुलकर बोला था, और उनके कॉल के बाद वर्ल्ड लीडर्स इस पर बोलना शुरू हो चुके हैं। वेयर एज डोमेस्टिकली our vote bank politicians of India Alliance, in particular Rahul Gandhi and Priyanka Vadra, are absolutely silent.
Kamala Harris has also shared her Diwali greetings. In a video posted on social media, Harris wished everyone celebrating the Festival of Lights, which marks the victory of good over evil. Bureau Report, India Today.
So the Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump raising the issue of atrocities against Hindus and other minorities in Bangladesh, maybe with an eye on US presidential elections and the Hindu American votes. But it also brings into sharp focus the continued atrocities against Hindus and other minorities since the ouster of the Sheikh Hasina government and the installation of that Nobel laureate Professor Muhammad Yunus-led dispensation, where radical Islamists are actually ruling the streets in Bangladesh. Joining me on this special broadcast are Rami Desai, a columnist and a distinguished fellow at the India Foundation, and Suan Serin, a senior fellow at the Observer Research Foundation. I want to begin by asking you, Rami, what do you make of the Republican presidential candidate in the US, Donald Trump, condemning this barbaric violence against Hindus, Christians and other minorities? How would Bangladesh, in your view, be reacting to this?
Good evening, Gaurav. I think this statement can only be welcomed because we've heard such silence throughout the atrocities that we've been seeing. Right at the outset, we even saw denial, but there has been absolute deliberate sort of whitewashing of all the communal violence that has taken place. Now, considering that this has happened after the alleged involvement of the US in the change of regime in Bangladesh, it doesn't take much to recognize why that would be so. I think the reason is that it will be difficult for them to publicly bear the responsibility of the consequences of the interference that has been alleged against them in Bangladesh. It was not long ago, Gaurav, that during Sheikh Hasina's regime, the US was slapping all sorts of sanctions on the government, which mind you, was democratically elected. Now, whether you like how it was elected, you like the leadership or not, but the US has always envisioned itself as a mouthpiece for democratic values, but yet these
And
democratic
it just shows this hypocrisy of the Biden administration, as several people in Bangladesh also now say. Suan Serin, Professor Muhammad Yunus, he's a Nobel laureate. He's seen as someone who's considered close to US President Joe Biden. All the videos and pictures of hugs going viral. But is he, in your view, either unwilling or unable to control these radical Islamists in Bangladesh who rode piggyback on that so-called students' revolution against Sheikh Hasina?
Gaurav, assuming he has his wits about him, given his advanced years, I think he is both unwilling and unable to do anything about it. Yes, he doesn't stop virtue signaling, an art which he has learned how to ingratiate himself with some of the power lobbies in the West, which seem to be batting for him. And in fact, my point of disagreement with Rami is that the Americans were not just silent; they were acquiescent in what was happening. They completely turned a blind eye, and she's right that there was complete denial that something like this is even happening in Bangladesh. And of course, there were a whole lot of Indian journalists who were trying to endorse that same line, as though these are isolated cases, even though we know that the spate of cases which happened after the ouster of Sheikh Hasina and some of the reprisal attacks which continue, the kind of scenes we keep seeing, you will never see those scenes in the mainstream media of Bangladesh because, of course,
Yes.
it's worse than Godi media also. But you see many of those scenes being put up by Hindus in Bangladesh, including some people with some conscience in Bangladesh, Muslims, who are putting up, the way the Islamists are coming into the universities, threatening students, threatening teachers, the way, non-Muslim communities are being intimidated. It's all in front of everybody. For the Americans or for the Europeans, and their media organizations, which are more propaganda sheets than media organizations, to be writing column after column of this great new revolutionary fervor in Bangladesh. This revolutionary fervor is almost like an Islamic revolution taking place with Hizbut Tahrir people, organizations which have been banned in some Western countries, openly being part of the government in Bangladesh. What do you expect to happen out there?
And what we are seeing on ground right now, at least Donald Trump is calling a spade, Rami Desai, because Hindu school students targeted, Hindu teachers forced to quit, Hindu police officers targeted, and there are multiple instances of continued targeting of Hindus in Bangladesh after the burning down of their homes and temples in the aftermath of Sheikh Hasina's ouster. Now, is Bangladesh becoming another Pakistan? Or is it becoming another Afghanistan with no place for minorities in Bangladesh? And why would you think that a certain ecosystem is completely silent on this, whether in the US or in India?
Gaurav, the fact of the matter is that Bangladesh is in a state of chaos and it's going to now remain in a state of chaos. For some reason, the Western powers feel that they can come into any country and control radical forces. We've already seen what has happened in Afghanistan. We've already seen what has happened in Pakistan. These are countries where there was leadership that was positioned, who were Western educated, had been to Ivy Leagues. We know how much that helped. The same thing we are seeing in Bangladesh. What concerns me is exactly what Sushant has pointed out. We have seen the radical forces outside media houses. So how can Bangladesh have an opinion? They are willing to tear down big media houses like Daily Star, amongst many others. We already know that ABT terrorists have been released. These people were arrested last year from Assam for trying to bring in bombs that they were going to use in the Northeast region. We have seen their early release a month ago. We have seen Mr. Yunus go to the US, and the first issue that he has brought up is the Rohingyas. Mind you, India has a very strong stance about how we feel about them and the kind of access which they will never have to India. So all these things are extremely concerning, and I think the US does not realize the kind of mess that has now been created here. And let me tell you, we cannot look at Bangladesh in isolation, Gaurav, because right next to it, you have Myanmar. Myanmar also has imprints of typical US sort of pressures,
Interference.
interference that
Yes.
they put, whether it is the sanctions, whether it is calling the sanctions Burma 2020. They don't even call the sanctions Myanmar 2020 so as to rile up the junta there. The opposition forces have an office stone's throw away from the White House, you know. So I think we have to see this as a region. We've already seen the Great Game West having played out, and today we are seeing the new Great Game East.
Which will have implications on on our eastern borders, and some of it we already unfortunately see in parts of our country. Suan Serin, when we talk of Donald Trump's statement on social media platform X, is Trump wooing the Hindu American voters only? The US administration under Joe Biden turned a blind eye to targeting of minorities in Bangladesh by a dispensation that they stand accused of putting in power by ousting a democratically elected leadership. But is he wooing just his domestic Hindu American audience, or is there a wider message that he's trying to send out?
You know, Gaurav, if there is a message he's trying to send out, and if he becomes president and he sticks to his guns on this particular message, which he has sent out right now, then I think it will be meaningful. As of now, you know, there would be a certain amount of skepticism as to how much Donald Trump is ready to put in store or for speaking out for the oppressed and the repressed Hindus or other minorities of Bangladesh. And what are the kind of new policies his administration are going to make if he comes to power? So I think the proof of the pudding will be in the eating of it. But look, the fact that a presidential candidate has now highlighted this issue, has flagged it, is speaking about it, will certainly, probably he's done it for political reasons. But look, if you say the right thing for political reasons, I think that should be welcome. He's not doing what some of the others do, that they'll say all the rotten things for political reasons like the Canadians do. You know, all the Canadian establishment across the board will support the Khalistani terrorists and these transnational gangs, even though they know that's the wrong thing to do, simply for votes. At least Donald Trump is saying the right things for the votes.
And Rami Desai, in your appreciation, and since you keep a keen eye on what's happening in Bangladesh, is now, is that country completely in control of radical Islamist elements? You know, because there are some videos, viral videos of women being forced into burqas or being forced out of universities. Are these isolated incidents, or will women no longer even be able to study, and perhaps Bangladesh could also go either the Pakistan way or the Afghanistan way completely?
Look, Gaurav, I think the future is grim. You know, there is going to be certain amount of hesitancy for the Awami League to regroup. They've been completely disbanded. You know, the Students' League has been banned. I think a country without an opposition has very little future left for itself. The radical forces taking over, yes, it is obvious. To the extent that even BNP party workers are upset with the interim government because they have not been given the kind of positions and the kind of power that they had expected. We must also remember that a lot of these groups have larger ties with the larger terrorist organizations, pan-Islamic terrorist organizations, whether it is the LET, whether it is the ABT, even the Rohingyas who sit on the Tomru border, who sit in Cox's Bazar. The leadership of the Rohingyas is Pakistani.
Yes.
So I think we have much to be worried about. And I think this sort of radicalization was always sort of simmering. But what was really concerning is that it's come to a point where the great nationalist leaders of the liberation war, the icons of Bangladesh who they looked up to as secular figures, that sort of imagery has been destroyed for the future generations. And I think this spells trouble for us. So I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't count on the fact that a proper democratically run election can happen anytime soon. But let me also make this last point. I think the longer that it takes, the better it will be. Because as the interim government continues to flounder, Awami League may have a chance to regroup, rethink, and re-strategize. And I think that is very important.
Absolutely, because the trouble is not just at our doorstep. In many cases, we have trouble within, and that fire that is lit across the border could lead to a fury inside. Rami Desai, for joining me here on India Today. Many thanks. And let me now quickly switch focus to the other big story we're tracking here on India Today. And that is what many are describing an open reprimand for the Pakistani foreign minister from the Chinese ambassador to Pakistan on the issue of the killing of Chinese nationals in Pakistan. So in a strongly worded statement, the Chinese ambassador to Pakistan, Zhang Zhurong, has called for urgent action against anti-China terrorist organizations following two deadly attacks on the Chinese in Pakistan in the past 6 months, and there have been many more in recent years. So this latest attack occurred just 10 days before the Chinese president Xi Jinping had planned a visit to Islamabad. Now, the ambassador expressed outrage over these incidents, saying it is unacceptable for us to be attacked twice in 6 months. He urged Pakistan to enhance security protocols to protect Chinese citizens and investments, highlighting that security concerns pose a significant challenge to the China-Pakistan economic corridor. Pakistan's Foreign Office described the ambassador's comments as surprising, emphasizing that foreign diplomats are guests. They will receive comprehensive security. Joining me on this broadcast is senior journalist Munir Memon from Pakistan. Suan Serin stays with me on the broadcast. And Munir Memon, I want to understand from you, whatever happened to that higher than mountains and deeper than oceans friendship, this has come down to open name-calling virtually on the streets?
Thank you so much, Gaurav, for inviting me over for this topic. Basically, what you are suggesting that, yes, there are some concerns regarding security, but you cannot relate it to this situation and friendship and the relationship between two countries. And trust me, I'm just updating you the ground realities. Chinese are quite focused and quite keen with working in Pakistan, and it would be a bit too early for me to right now say this, but we are totally understanding that how Chinese having the security concerns. Yes, there are elements who are there to destabilize Pakistan and who are actually trying to hammer the friendship and relationship between Pakistan and China. But I believe both the states are mature enough to understand what are the common agendas. The common agenda is for Pakistan and China.
No, fair enough. Sir, common agenda, if they're mature enough, and Suan Serin, when countries are mature enough, they don't fight in public. Even if Pakistan and China were to disagree, these are issues that can be discussed in private away from public glare. Why do you think the Chinese ambassador chose to reprimand the Pakistani foreign minister in public and twice?
So, Gaurav, I think the way that entire episode played itself out was that the Pakistan foreign minister, what he tried to do was he tried to play down the attacks which had been taking place. And I think the message which came out from his speech at that function was that, despite these attacks, there is the Chinese are going to continue to invest in Pakistan and they're not going to leave Pakistan. I think the Chinese ambassador was triggered by this because he thought that they're trying to play it down and they do not understand the Chinese sensitivities and the salience of what the Chinese are trying to tell them on the security dimension. So he'd already made a speech and he then rebutted what the foreign minister was saying, which is not exactly a very diplomatic thing to do. But I think the Chinese felt constrained that they had to do something like this. Now, over the last couple of years, in fact, since CPEC has started, there have been a number of occasions in which Chinese politicians, Chinese diplomats have made certain statements which actually seem to be hectoring Pakistan some. Initially, these were nudges and pushes, but now they have become far more strident, at least in the context of China-Pakistan relations. So one is that, the Chinese security concerns. But I think there's another part to it. The Chinese are insisting that they've already lost money.
Yes.
They're losing money hand over fist on CPEC, but they are now also losing lives. So what they are asking the Pakistanis is that they should be allowed boots on the ground to protect their investments and to protect their people. The Pakistanis are balking. I think this is an opportunity for the Chinese to make a push for that particular stuff which
And
they're
that's the
asking.
point I'm coming to, because that's such a huge failure for the Pakistani army. In case the Chinese army were to put boots on ground, Munir, the fact remains Pakistan army has failed to protect the Chinese, either their officials, their engineers or workers. And I'm not just talking about the Dasu Dam incident, multiple incidents in the past several years. Chinese are no longer safe even in military convoys or even when they exit airports. So it just goes on to show that the Chinese interests, investments, and even people are not safe in Pakistan.
Gaurav, firstly, I'm really amazed that my friend, who is quoting that China is having some issues and they are reluctant in investing in Pakistan. I think the ground reality is entirely different. I don't know where the stats are coming through, but what's actual reality in Pakistan? Yes, there was a terrorist attack. Yes, there was an attack in Karachi, and I was quite nearby that attack. Yes, these are concerns for anybody, and China is no exception to it. But you also understand that the statement of Interior Minister and Foreign Minister, what they said, they are there, they are investing it, and the investigations are done on a very good grounds, and all the updates or all the developments are being shared readily with China,
And then another attack takes place. And then another attack takes place.
The investigation is taking place in the right direction.
What have investigations resulted in? And that question that Suan Serin also raised, has the situation come to such a pass that Pakistanis can no longer protect the Chinese and China may have to send in perhaps a division or two of the Chinese army, boots on ground in Pakistan?
I'm again saying I don't know the basis of such a statement, because these are the statements which I only hear on the Indian media. On the ground reality, trust me, I'm right now talking to you while I'm sitting in Balochistan. I'm basically from Karachi, but I'm right now sitting in Balochistan, and the ground reality here is different. What my friend is
I hope you stay safe in Balochistan.
I'm right now in Balochistan. If you want, I can have some snapshot with my Chinese friends and the Chinese authority as well. And surely you'll get it very soon. The ground reality, I am really amazed that how can two countries, the two mature countries, the two countries which are having strong alliances, can just do it on the basis of some attack? Yes, we understand the lives of the Chinese matters, and we are really concerned about everyone. But we also understand that threat and terrorism is the one thing which we have to face everyone. And it's
So
not
you
only
are saying that Pakistan,
it might be in European countries. It's also in US. The terrorism is there. We cannot say that, okay, there is terrorism, so we are wrapping up our business, we are wrapping our billions and billions dollar projects, and then we are leaving Pakistan. I don't think this is going to ever happen from Pakistan.
Okay, so hashtag Chinese Lives Matter is what will trend next in Pakistan, because I want to bring you in Suan Serin into... I want to bring Suan Serin into this.
Gaurav, everyone's life matters.
To me, it sounds like hypocrisy coming from Pakistan. Every life matters.
No,
if you're downplaying it, you may get a reprimand from the Chinese for saying yes.
I'm not downplaying it. I'm just reporting the reality.
But no, fair enough. Let me get Suan Serin. Let me get Suan Serin. Suan Serin, where are you getting this notion that the Chinese may have to send in a division or two, or maybe their own troops, because the Pakistanis have failed, and that CPC has failed, and that China has sunk more than $60 billion? Because I have a theory on this, and I want you to comment on that, Suan Serin. Is it that Pakistan has gobbled up that $60 billion? It knows it doesn't want to remain a Chinese vassal state anymore, or does it want to remain a Chinese vassal state? So they said, kill a few Chinese, they'll run away. We've eaten the money, we've gobbled up the money, and the project will be a dead on start.
No, Gaurav, one, it's not $60 billion. It's just about $23-24 billion which the Chinese have invested so far.
Okay.
The problem is the Pakistanis are not even able to service, their obligations on whatever investments have been made. So one is that problem, which is why I say those projects are not even paying for themselves. And the Chinese know that they're losing money, which is why they're not really investing any more new money. There are a lot of MOUs they've signed. But if MOUs were actual projects, Pakistan would be Switzerland by now, because it's the country of MOUs, which never fructify. So one is that. Secondly, I don't know under which rock our friend from, maybe it's some rock in Balochistan, that he hasn't read his own Pakistani media, which has been reporting on the Chinese insisting on what they call euphemistically a joint security mechanism. This traces back to almost 2013, 2014, when they wanted to have liaison officers in the security division, which was created separately for CPEC. They wanted to monitor what they were doing. The Pakistanis did not really allow it, but they said, we'll share information with you. Subsequently, the Chinese have been insisting and have been, and in fact, they've been emphatically asking for some kind of Chinese presence to protect their own projects, because despite repeated assurances from the Pakistanis at the highest levels, the Pakistanis haven't been able to protect the Chinese workers, Chinese engineers, and Chinese establishments in Pakistan. So there are serious concerns for the Chinese. Number three, if Balochistan was such a hip and happening place, so nice, so safe, you would not be getting the spate of attacks which are mounting on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
Number one. Number two, journalists would be allowed free access. Now, the only journalists who are allowed any kind of access, which is very controlled access, are journalists who are basically mouthpieces of the Pakistani deep state, the Pakistani military establishment. So the point is that independent journalists simply cannot go and report in from Balochistan.
No, and the fact when Pakistani officials themselves are not safe, when Pakistani army is not safe, when there are tens of attacks that are taking place every other day in Balochistan, how will the Chinese feel safe? But the bigger point, is CPEC, Munir, a stillborn project?
Gaurav, first of all, I think you have to understand the dynamics of Pakistan and Balochistan. Balochistan is by far the largest province of Pakistan, and CPEC, the root of CPEC is very minimalistic. And what you say, what I see the international media, especially the Indian media, is maneuvering, that any incident happening in Balochistan, they just link it directly to the CPEC. Firstly, yeah, that's my case. My friend was initially suggesting that there are some Chinese boots in Pakistan. Now he's saying it's just an idea, just a mere query, nothing more in the reality. But
we'll see that in weeks and months ahead, because with Pakistan army failing to protect Chinese nationals, they're actually dropping like flies in Pakistan. If they continue to die, if they continue to be killed in Pakistan, then China will have no alternative either to fold up or to put its boots on ground, and we'll be tracking that story very closely. Munir Memon, I'll wait for good news. I'll wait for good news the day Pakistan stops being a terror attack. Okay. Suan Serin and Munir Memon for joining me here on India Today. Many thanks.
With
जाओगी कैसे?
हेलो,
मैं आ रहा हूँ, भगा कर ले जाऊंगा।
सिक्योरिटी, भाग गए, पकड़ो उनको। हेलो,
बोला था ना, भगा कर ले जाऊंगा।
एक हिंट तो देते?
हिंट?
बड़े आराम से।
Motorola Razr 50 Ultra comes with Google Gemini.
ज़माने से हटकर बेबाक है मेरा सिग्नेचर। Signature Finest Cardamom Seeds, a premium product from Dilbar Group.